paper.
All right, waiting for the camera to turn on. It's now on, and I'm going to call to order the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville on Tuesday, April 23rd, 2013, and we will start with roll call.
Eileen Nichols.
Here.
Dick Bonin.
Here.
Ken Killian.
Here.
Barbara Stockhausen.
Here.
Patrice Steiner.
Here.
Mike Den.
Here.
And Barbara Doss.
Here. The first item this evening is consideration of the consent calendar. Following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to the routine nature of previous discussion. Please indicate to the council president if you would prefer separate discussion and action. A is minutes of the April 9th and April 16th council meetings. B is payment of bills. C is appointment to boards and commissions. And this evening, the following people will be appointed to the boards and commissions. To the Freudenreich Animal Care Trust Fund, Marcia Courts. Library Board, Matt Sexton and Tim Durst. Police and Fire Commission, Rosalind Broussard. And I have given the council members this evening information on the boards, commissions, and committees that they will be liaisons for. For the public information, we all serve as council liaison to certain boards, commissions, and committees, and we ask council members to indicate preferences and try to accommodate schedules so that those appointments can be made. Licenses, temporary Class B retailers licensed to serve fermented malt beverages for the public JCs at Legion Park for the July 3rd truck pull and July 4th celebration / fireworks. 2 is the temporary Class B retailers licensed to serve wine for the Platteville Area Chamber of Commerce at Katie's Garden for the May 8th National Tourism Week celebration. 3, 1 and or 2-year operators for premises licensed to traffic and fermented malt beverages and intoxicating liquors. We have 2-year licenses for Kyle P. Dagman, Megan A. Morrishead, and Jacob A. Zilbar, and a taxi driver license for Vincent P. Martin. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Next item is citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any, and I have 2 this evening, both of whom would like to speak. First is Jack Lutke, and then followed by Tom Loinger.
Good evening. My name is Jack Ludke. I'm the Executive Director for the Main Street Program. And I just wanted to call the Council's attention, as well as the community, to the annual Historic Walk Down Main. And in particular this year, you have a flyer on your desk concerning this event. But in particular this year, I wanted to call your attention to it because part of the walk is going to be held, the events are going to be held here in City Hall. In this chamber, we will have a dinner. As the flyer indicates, we will start our walk this year at Gina's Restaurant on 2nd Street, which is a totally historically restored building on 2nd Street, and hopefully will be completed by the May 7th date. And then we will walk down here to City Hall, have a catered dinner upstairs here, and then adjourn to the theater downstairs for a dessert and for a presentation of a play, some readings called, the play is Driftless Dreams. It's by Robert Wolfe. The author will be here to address the group as well, and we certainly would invite all of you to join us that evening. The net proceeds from the event will be distributed to the Cushman Foundation award to facilitate additional music in the park longevity. So Again, you're all invited. Hope you can make it. In the past few years, it's been a great evening, and people have enjoyed it. So, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Tom Longer?
Good evening, my name is Tom Lowinger. I'm here to address tree removals during street reconstruction. You might notice I commented reconstruction. And this is the trees at Smith Park, I know are down. So this is more pointed for future projects so we can get more of an informed determination as to maybe whether trees should come down or not. I know they kind of used the example of the trees out at Oak Haven where many of the oaks died. I would like to possibly differentiate. That was a case where it was through an oak woods where the roots, etc., were probably closer to the surface and probably were stressed more. And typically in road reconstruction, the roots are trained to go underneath the gravel. They're not impacted, I don't think, so much by the construction. When the comment was made last time, or not necessarily last time, but in the discussion over the trees at Smith Park, comment was made that they didn't think the trees would survive on whatever choice was made. And it occurred to me then, just out of nowhere, that I don't hardly remember any trees dying in all the years we've done road construction. And I'm probably wrong. I'm sure there's some that have died, but I don't recall them. And I've been at this for a couple of years. And I drove around. I think I can probably come up with probably 75 to 100 trees in town that have survived road reconstruction, including I'm up to 5 nice oak trees now. One over at the corner of Longhorn and Southwest Road. One on 2nd Street, just the house above the middle school. There's another real nice one across the street from the Fine Arts Center. One on Preston Drive. I just found a nice 4-foot diameter one, I think, up on Elmer Street, just west of Elm Street. And these are all done just in the recent last 10, 15 years. Quite often the roots are poured right up to the concrete. Now, what I'd like to do is get a discussion going. If there's people out in the community that are aware of trees that have died from road construction, contact myself or maybe Howard or Dan, and maybe we could get, well, 25 have died and 50 have lived. Well, we got a 30% chance that tree would live. But, or maybe, I'm just trying to get where we could come with a more informed decision as to the survivability of these trees during reconstruction, so that when it comes up down the road, it doesn't divide everybody again. So I'm kind of looking for community help as much as anything. I've talked with some members of the city, and offhand, because I just come up and ask them, they couldn't remember where any trees had to be cut. And I'm not including Oak Haven in this because I figure that's new street construction. My second point I'd like to bring up is why we're leaving the 3 diseased trees, the tree on the Ridge Avenue corner, which I think are probably infected with what's called butternut canker, which is, it's a fungus, I believe. I'm not totally sure on this, but it's pretty much eliminated this butternut trees around. And why do we leave them grow there and to continue spreading the fungus? I know I have 2 butternut trees at our property, so if the fungus gets on my tree, on my vehicles or something, it spreads it. And then what happens down the road when, say, the ash borer comes into town, and somebody says, well, you got to cut that tree down, and they say, well, the city didn't cut down the butternut trees, why do I have to cut down my ash tree? Or somebody said, you got to cut down your oak tree, it has oak wilt. Well, the city doesn't cut down their butternut trees. So those are 2 concerns I had. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda are reports in our packet. There's committee reports from the Police and Fire Commission, Roundtree Gallery Board. Steiner, anything to add?
Nothing.
And Water and Sewer Commission, Steiner, Killian, and Delecky, anything to add?
Nope.
All right,
I have a question for
Yes.
Patrice.
okay.
On the Roundtree Gallery, is this a typo? Under the minutes, March 7th? Under Part 4, it says that you tabled the February minutes. Is that supposed to be approved?
We didn't have a quorum at one of the meetings. I assume that was where, I have it up on the screen now. Ken, where are you reading?
Under item 4B, Roman numeral 4B,
Oh,
March
right.
7th.
Yeah, let's see, motion.
Wait, is that a typo? It's not that
That
important.
was the March 7th meeting he's talking about.
Oh, yeah, you're right, it doesn't really make sense. 1, 2, 3, there are 4 people there, that was a quorum. I will have to ask Nicole about that.
Okay. Other reports, including the building inspection report, the 2012 tax incremental financing districts 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Those reports are in our packet. And department progress reports. Any questions or comments on any of those? All right, we'll go into action items. The first one is Resolution 1314, establishing Building Platteville Green Program. Larry, would you like to speak to this briefly?
I'd like to call on Joe Carroll to try to
Okay.
address the program for us.
Okay, back in February, we had a presentation from Eric Trulove of the Rentschler Company out of Madison. He proposed an idea that Platteville adopt some green building standards, basically standards that would be followed for new construction, primarily commercial development, but it would also work for industrial and larger multifamily projects. It was a set of guidelines that they would follow when constructing that building that would provide standards for energy efficiency and environmentally friendly construction management practices and so forth. Proposed as an idea, basically it wouldn't cost the city anything. The developer would essentially pay for it. They would pay a fee to the city. The city would pay a fee to the Rentschler Company to oversee the operation of those guidelines as far as the construction of that particular development. And then in the return, the developer would receive a plaque or a notification of some sort that they had followed the guidelines, and then they therefore have a Platteville green building. So that was his proposal. The council asked the staff to do a couple of things. One is to verify that these guidelines would not conflict with any existing building codes or zoning ordinances or other city ordinances. The staff did do a review of that and determined that there are no conflicts, so we don't have to worry about creating a conflict with the zoning ordinance or so forth. They asked the city attorney to determine if there was any potential legal issues that he may see in that proposal, and I did include those in the staff report, that mostly he had questions as far as, you know, how is it going to work, and things that had to be identified during the process as far as the resolution, but no serious legal issues that we would have to worry about. And then the third one was to, you know, get the word out, spread you know, these draft guidelines to various developers and so forth, get some feedback if there was interest and any comments, suggestions that we may have from developers. I did send it out to essentially developers that have worked in Platteville in the past or are currently working in Platteville as far as commercial development and larger multifamily development, to see what their comments or suggestions or ideas were regarding these guidelines. Unfortunately, I got very little in response as far as comments. What I did receive was thanks but no thanks. The guidelines are fine, but we don't have any interest in them, or they didn't really seem to see the incentive, or, you know, what is the developer really getting out of those to go through that process. You know, there are other codes or similar programs out there that they can already take advantage of, so they didn't, I guess they didn't really see the benefit of doing these. So at the moment, I didn't see that anybody's interested in it. That doesn't mean a future developer may not want to take advantage of it, but at the moment there doesn't seem to be a lot of interest in the program. So that's what we were directed to do, and that's what we got back for a response. So I guess as far as the staff recommendation, we're basically neutral on it. It's not really gonna cost the city anything, so, other than the staff time to get it up and running. But at this point, it doesn't seem like there's gonna be a lot of benefit as either, so it's kind of a wash as far as whether we should go forward with it. So I guess it's up to the council if you want us to pursue this further or not.
But Joe, it looks to me like it's in the private sector, it's, or the individuals, it's just another fee out of their pocket. Where if you get the right information, or, because I've done it with a house, and I didn't have to pay no fee to somebody in the state. It's pretty much if you learn yourself, you can do this on your own without having to pay a fee to somebody.
And that's what one of the developers commented, that a lot of those guidelines are becoming standard practice that people do, or at least developers do anyway. I think where my understanding is where companies that do go through the process, they use it more as almost like a marketing tool for that company, that they can then declare themselves as, say, we're taking these additional steps above and beyond to, do things that are in an environmentally friendly manner. So for them, it's more of a corporate policy that this is a decision we want to make for other reasons. It's definitely not economic.
Other comments, Jeff?
I have a question, 2 questions and then a comment. First of all, included in this packet this time was something called the multifamily checklist from the Wisconsin Environmental Initiative. I'm assuming that is not part of the packet from Rensselaer?
Correct. That was something I got in response from a developer that basically said, look, there's already programs like this out there. Here's an example of one that we use on a regular basis. So that was part of their way of saying, we don't really need another
We don't really
one.
need it because the Wisconsin Environmental Initiative, you can go online and find us, similar to what Dick just said about his own. The second thing, the city attorney had made several recommendations, I guess, in his evaluation of this relative to who, specifying these things in the resolution. I didn't see any change in, I didn't see these things specified. His question about who owns the name Building Platteville Green, all of these things, to me, it did not look like there had been any change in the resolution wording to include any of that. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay.
If the council goes forward with that, we would make modifications as needed to address those.
But if we adopted this resolution tonight, it doesn't include all of that.
Correct.
I think with the resolution is establishing what the city council wants. The city staff will have to establish an administrative policy as to how the program is managed.
Although the city attorney has said very specifically, specify this in the resolution, specify in the resolution, specify in the resolution, not put this in administrative policy.
Anyone else? Sorry.
To me, the only advantage or a potential advantage of something like this is for the sake of, I guess, marketing, or to say that, we have a sustainability committee in the city, and, we've done things to be eco-friendly and complete streets and sidewalk, and this would be toward that, but I frankly don't think that this is prepared to the point that the city council should even consider it, so I certainly wouldn't make a motion on it.
And just for clarification, the council does not have to take action on it this evening if they choose not to. You can choose not to take any action, you can table. Ken, did you have a question?
Yes, if we pass this resolution, how much work does it involve as far as staff? You have at the bottom here the staff would begin implementing the proposed green building guidelines. Do you have any idea how much work would it involve?
No, I think, a lot of it is how much we want to market it and put it out there to developers would be, I would think, a lot of that time. But, the Rensselaer company is obviously going to be doing the day-to-day work if it's implemented.
Yeah, I wouldn't anticipate marketing this very strongly. I think that's up to the company that's using this as their business model to do.
Yes, Mike?
One thing I've noticed is that when you have voluntary programs good in place, it's real easy to make them mandatory down the road somewhere along the line, and I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. It just would add increased costs for the developers, for the homeowner, especially for residential homeowners, and that would be a real reason to chase people to build somewhere else other than in town.
Well, I looked at this as kind of a mini LEAD program. I suppose it's probably more popular in the Dane County, Madison area than it would be down here. I think the idea is good, but I do agree with Barb that that the resolution still needs to be defined a bit more, which is what our city attorney had pointed out. And the developers, the ones that, he had a good point in that it should be a win-win situation, not just a feel-good, to say that you use these, that you use this, these building, go green building guidelines. He wanted more of an incentive, I guess, to do it. And I'm not sure what that incentive would be, but,
Are you, you brought up the incentive point. Does the city council intend to offer incentive to do this? No, okay. I see.
I don't think that was the intention. I don't think anyone on the council had suggested
Okay.
that. As a matter of fact, if anything, this particular green building suggestion was to be revenue neutral. I mean, it wasn't to cost the city any funding. And the last question from the attorney is, who pays a $300 fee for final inspection?
Right.
You know, that needs to be answered as well, so.
The intent is for all of the costs to be covered by the business that's applying.
Right.
well, is it,
It sounds like you have a lot of concerns about the attorney's recommendations, and maybe what we could do is remodel the resolution to include the attorney's recommendations and bring it back to you if you're interested in pursuing this. I think the only thing that wouldn't be covered would be staff time administering this. There is no administrative fee in the resolution. Is that something you want to consider?
So really, staff is looking for direction as far as whether or not the council is interested in pursuing this idea.
so there were only 2 developers that answered you, Joe?
Actually, 3. 2 of them that provide comments, the other one just said, no thanks, we're not interested.
So what's the will of the council?
Well, I think it should be tabled and brought back. There is some remnant of money left of the $1,000. That's what I figured out. So there would be something coming to the city.
Is that correct, Joe or Larry?
Yeah, at least the Rentschler company had proposed $265 per building fee, and if we're getting 1,000, so there's money that the city would be taking in as profit, so to speak.
I have
But
one
again,
more.
what would be the incentive for the developer to pay that?
I guess I have one more question. The paperwork on this is dated 2009. That's when it was proposed to the city of Madison and not adopted. Has any other city adopted this?
Not that I'm aware of.
So we're looking at 2009 paperwork in 2013 and trying to decide if we should adopt this all of a sudden when no one else has adopted it and the paperwork, it wasn't even updated from 2009.
This isn't a proposal that staff solicited.
No, I
This was something
understand.
the city council brought to us,
Right.
and we're trying to tweak it to meet what your demands, what you want.
I'd like to just let it die. Forget it.
I let it die.
I say let it die.
I say let it die.
Well, if there's no motion to move forward, then it just
That's what it does.
does not go forward.
Want to spend that money, you just will spend it yourself onto something green, not give it to somebody else.
I don't hear a motion, so we're going to go on to the next item, which is a borrowing resolution, 1315 Revenue Obligation Trust Fund Loan for TID number 6, Economic Development Incentive, Emmy Roth. And Larry, did you want to
Yes,
cover
please.
this one? All right.
The city of Platteville entered into a development agreement with Emmy Roth for a 70,000 square foot building, about $15 million in increments, and I believe they're starting with about 30 jobs. As part of that development agreement, there were certain incentives offered. The first incentive is a $2 million payment broken up into two $1 million payments, triggered by the completion of their building. The first million is triggered by the completion of the cellar where the cheese is stored, and the second million is triggered by the final completion of the building. What you see before you today is a borrowing resolution for the city of Platteville to borrow money from the state of Wisconsin under a TID revenue bond, where the increment generated from the TIF district pays back the bond. This is one way of funding this incentive in a way that it does not impact city taxpayers. It comes out of the TIF district. And what the intent here is on the staff side is to borrow the money, or to file an application with the state of Wisconsin to borrow the money, find out what the interest rate is that the state of Wisconsin would charge, and then to offer that opportunity to bid against the state to all of our local banks. We would much rather keep the debt locally, but at the same time, we want to create a competitive marketplace. So the intent here is to ask the city council to approve the resolution that would allow the city staff to submit an application to the state of Wisconsin to borrow $2 million under a TID revenue bond.
I have a question. Is this not, we have a bond counsel, Jeff and Hutchison?
Belanger.
Yeah.
Yep. This is something that he has advised us and worked with us to do.
Okay.
Yep.
My question is, how much will this cost for the bonding? Do you know what the price on this would be?
No, we're simply filing the application with the state, and then they will be giving us the interest rate. And I'll use that interest rate. Is that what you're referring to as the cost? The
Right,
interest
and
rate?
the other thing is sometimes for bonding, there's a cost to do this, correct?
There will be bond charges
Right.
that typically a consultant would get. In this case, if we go with the state or a local bank, I don't anticipate any bonding charges for bond consultants.
Okay, in here you mentioned a 4.3% interest rate in this?
Well, preliminarily, the state of Wisconsin thinks the interest rate will be close to 4.5%.
Okay.
They said I have to file a formal application before they can give me all of the final numbers.
Have you looked elsewhere yet to see what's out there? Have you looked into the market to see what's available out there for this type of thing?
Yes, I have. Not at this schedule. Initially, what I did was I contacted local banks to find out how they would price out a 7-year repayment period, and I did get interest rates on that. Under the development agreement, Emmy Roth has to approve the financing, because if their tax payment to the city TIF district is less than what is needed to pay back the bond, they have to cover the difference. So the city protected itself in a way that we wouldn't have to pay a debt that we didn't have the revenue coming in to do. And so what has happened is they've decided they'd rather see it on a longer term than 7 years for that very reason. They don't want to have to contribute more in tax money than what they're required to do. So we're looking at probably closer to I want to say about a 14-year schedule. And so that's what we're looking at with the state of Wisconsin. It's somewhat flexible depending on what the payments are. We'd like the payments to be within whatever it is their property is assessed at ultimately.
If you were to pursue the bonding part or issue, and you were able to find lower interest rates somewhere else,
Yes.
would there be a penalty to change?
I do not believe so. There typically is not.
Okay.
What we're doing is we're trying to get the lowest amount right now. So by getting it with the state, if, for example, the state said it was 4.5%, we would then ask our local banks to try to compete with that, hopefully getting the best interest rate possible. We've been told in the past that some of our bond issues that now is the best environment to borrow money and that we're getting some of the lowest rates we have in 40 to 60 years. So I'm fairly confident that whatever rate we get is going to be a very good one.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other
anyone else?
questions? Comments?
I make a motion that we approve a borrowing resolution to ensure that the city can complete our application for a loan from the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands.
Is there a second?
Second to the motion.
I think Patrice got there a hair sooner. Roll call vote, please.
Nichols,
Yes.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes.
Den,
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
The next item is Resolution 1316, conditional use permit, retaining walls at 555 Ellen Street. I think this is gonna be Joe.
Yes. There's a vacant parcel just next to Walgreens. It's along Business Highway 151 between Virgin Avenue and Allen Street. There's a developer proposing a multi-tenant commercial building on that site. I'm sure you've all driven by that site many times, but if you've ever really looked at it or not, it's up on a hill, fairly steep topography. They're going to put the building basically up on the hill and the parking lot behind it, as far as from Business Highway 151. To really make things work, to get a level pad, they're going to basically terrace that site. And to do that, they're going to build some retaining walls on that site to make it work. Our zoning ordinance has a provision that any retaining walls that are over 4 feet tall and closer than 5 feet to the lot line have to be approved by a conditional use permit by the council. And basically, we put that in the ordinance for a couple of main reasons. One is a safety issue. If it's close to a property line, particularly if it's close to a sidewalk, do we have to worry about somebody accidentally, falling off the wall or not realizing there's a grade differential there. And then the other is if there's a vision problem as far as traffic and so forth. So that process allows us to take a look at that and see if there's any steps that need to be taken to address any potential concerns. In this case, one of those walls is basically right next to a sidewalk. So to address that issue, the developer has proposed a fence or a railing along the top of that wall next to that sidewalk to address that issue. So they have taken care of that main problem. As far as location, it's not going to be any issue as far as visibility of traffic and so forth, since it is up on the hill and away from the intersection, so that will not be a problem. The Planning Commission reviewed this request at their April meeting, and they did recommend approval of the conditional use permit. Staff also recommends approval of the permit to allow the retaining walls with 2 conditions. The first one is that the walls shall be constructed according to the engineering drawings that are provided in the packet, or with some minor modifications if approved by staff. And then the second one, that the fence, as indicated, also be installed as indicated on the drawings. But with those conditions, we would recommend approval as well. Any questions?
Joe, I've been out by that site and I still have questions. The northwest boundary, I guess that's what it would be, because this property kind of is off to the northwest. Is there a retaining wall there between that property and the property behind it?
No.
So the retaining wall is on the
South side of the
side.
building and parking lot.
And, okay,
South and east sides of the building and parking. So basically, it's up the hill from Business Highway 151 and up the hill from Virgin Avenue.
okay. And that's where those retaining walls are.
Correct.
Any other questions?
My question is, what is the site appearance of this? Is this parking lot sunken into the property some?
Well,
Because the retaining wall part is lower, that's where the building's gonna be. So, is the parking lot gonna be,
the parking lot's
in some?
basically up on the top of the hill to the
Right,
far north
right.
of that. So since the ground starts to slope towards Virgin Avenue, they're actually going to build up part of where the parking lot is so it remains flat. So the retaining wall will hold up part of the parking lot, and it gets lower, it steps down as you get closer to the street.
but the building's between the parking lot and the retaining walls?
Except for on the east side.
Except on the east side.
The retaining wall goes farther north than the building, adjacent to the parking lot.
And there's no exit onto Virgin Avenue, right?
Correct,
Because that will be built up.
correct,
So the sidewalk will actually be elevated
correct.
with a fence on the street side, not on the parking lot side.
Right, because on the parking lot side is basically just a curb to get down from the sidewalk to the parking lot.
Mike, you had a question?
Yes, Joe, I went over and I looked at that property a couple different times, and I understand that the retaining walls, we need that for grading purposes to make everything work. But I see absolutely no reason for sidewalks. Those are sidewalks to nowhere. There are no connecting sidewalks. Why do you want to put a sidewalk down on the south end of it where the Highway 150, Business 151 is going to be? I see absolutely no reasoning for that. The rest of it, everything is fine, but I don't see any reason for sidewalks there whatsoever. 20 years down the road, maybe they'll connect, but we'll worry about that then, not now.
Yeah, that's actually the next agenda item, so.
Yep,
Oh, I'm
that's the
sorry, I
next-
thought that
that's
was
okay.
part of
Get to
it,
that.
my
we're-
mistake.
Yep, we're just talking about the retaining wall right now, but we will get to the sidewalk waiver, and by the way, I have.
Part of it, okay.
Yeah, I have a number of people who have asked to speak or registered their opinion on the sidewalk. If there's anybody that meant to say they wanted to talk about the retaining wall, because some of you just put 555 Ellen, and I'm not sure if you meant just the sidewalk or if you also meant the retaining wall, so, not seeing anyone come forward, I'll say we have no public comments on that particular part of it. Well, if you want to speak now, Christina, then that's fine, or you can come and speak when the sidewalk portion comes up. Right now, we're just talking about the retaining walls. Okay? Any other, council discussion?
How close is this retaining wall then to, I mean, this is within, when you say within 5 feet of the property line, is this retaining wall at the edge of the street? Is this retaining wall going to, is there going to be an issue with snow because there's no place to push snow, because all of a sudden there's no, whatever you call that spot between the sidewalk
Terrace.
and the curb, I don't know what you call that, but that piece of
Tree arbor.
grass?
No, on the east side, the wall will go right up to the property line, but, the setback
So is
there-
that right up to where the curb is?
No, I think the setback along there is 20 feet, so it's still 20 feet from the curb.
Okay, so there's still a place for snow storage is
Correct.
my,
Right,
is my issue,
Yes.
right.
okay?
So there will be grass from the retaining walls down to the street then, right?
Correct.
Yes.
You have you're showing setbacks. On the west, it's 20 feet, is that correct? I can't quite read it. And on the south, it's a 25-foot setback.
It's 20 feet on the east and west,
Okay, and
25 feet
25
on the south, and 40 feet, which they're not anywhere close to that because of the parking lot on the north.
Yeah, okay.
And they actually did get a variance to establish those setbacks from the Board of Appeals.
They've gotten variance already?
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'm ready for a motion. Just on the retaining wall.
I would move to approve the conditional use permit for the retaining walls at 555 Allen Street.
And I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Jan, did you have a chance to get that? Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Nichols,
Yes.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes,
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes,
Den, or Steiner?
yes, I'm sorry,
Steiner,
I'm only
I
hearing
just
part
can't
of
get,
it.
Den,
Yes,
Doss,
For her.
I did, I tried. I need to turn my hearing aids up.
and Doss.
Yes,
is this the new
Motion
order?
carried.
8 yeses.
yeah. We're several
We're out of
hundred
order.
people who voted. Don't worry about that, though.
All right, now we're on to the sidewalk waiver for 555 Ellen Street, so.
Okay, obviously, it's the same project. Since it's a new construction on a vacant parcel, the zoning ordinance has a provision in the design standards that says construction for commercial development on a lot that doesn't have sidewalks, public sidewalks present, shall construct sidewalks as part of the development along the street frontage of that property. In this case, the property does not have sidewalks present. There's a existing sidewalk along Virgin Avenue that extends down to the property and actually a little bit past the north property line. but there is no other public sidewalks present on that block. There is an existing sidewalk on the other side of Ellen Street, just north of the property line. So by definition in the ordinance, it would say that a sidewalk should be constructed along the street frontage for this development. But the ordinance also says that basically the council can waive that requirement. I lost my language. Too many piles here.
Tough when you lose your language.
But anyway, the council has the ability to waive that if they determine it's not necessary to serve pedestrian traffic. Connecting sidewalks are not present or planned for on adjacent properties. If sidewalks are not required to be installed as part of the project, the city maintains the right to construct sidewalks at a future date and assess the owners of the adjacent land for the cost thereof. So the developer has made a request to request a sidewalk waiver to that requirement that sidewalks be installed along all 3 street frontages. They are proposing an extension to the sidewalk. In the site plan, they're basically connecting to that existing sidewalk on Virgin Avenue, extending it south along their parking lot, along the front of their building, and then over to Ellen Street, where it will stop at the curb of Ellen Street. So that is what they're proposing. Obviously, as I mentioned, and due to the conversation we just had about the retaining walls, there are some topography issues there, so the developer is looking at it and saying, hey, that would be very difficult and expensive to extend that further to the south along Business Highway 151, and there are no sidewalks to connect to the south of there, so they're asking for the waiver to that requirement. This issue did go to the Plan Commission as well at their April meeting. The Plan Commission recommended approval of the sidewalk waiver to basically have the sidewalks installed as the developer has proposed it, basically with the understanding that that sidewalk as it turns in front of the building is essentially a private sidewalk at that point, but as long as the public would be allowed to use that if they wanted to get from one side of the block to the other, that they would be able to do that, and the developer has indicated that would not be an issue. This request also went to the Community Safe Routes Committee for their review and recommendation, and their recommendation was that the City Council enforce the existing sidewalk ordinance, which is 22061 in the zoning ordinance, to install sidewalk along all street frontages for the 555 Ellen Street redevelopment, including the installation of a handicap ramp connecting the proposed sidewalk on the east side of Ellen, which is the northwest corner of the property, to the sidewalk on the west side of Ellen. We recommend this action to improve the safety for pedestrians and provide pedestrian connectivity in this busy corridor. So basically, you've got a yes and a no as far as your recommendations. Yes for the waiver from the Plan Commission and no from the Safe Routes Committee. So staff looked at this and said, well, let's see if we can find a compromise somewhere in between there. So in your packet, I have a drawing. Hopefully you've got the colored version. I colored it. The green sidewalks are the existing along Virgin and Ellen Street. The pink is what was proposed by the developer. As I mentioned, it extends south along Virgin Avenue, along next to the parking lot, and then in front of the building over to Ellen Street. We would propose basically a partial waiver to that requirement, require them to install a sidewalk, then from that one they're installing, then north again along Ellen Street with a little extension over to the curb, so that it would essentially connect to the sidewalk on the other side of Ellen Street. So if somebody's walking down there, they could cross the street, get on the sidewalk, and then extend down to the building. So it would essentially connect this building to both of the existing sidewalks north of there, which are the only sidewalks present in that area. So I think that's essentially what the intent, or the main intent of the ordinance was, is to provide that connection from the development to existing sidewalks. It would not provide any sidewalks further south, since that is the area essentially where it gets steep, the topography becomes an issue, the cost becomes more prohibitive, and there are no sidewalks to be connected to further south. That's kind of our compromise. I guess staff views this, that that connection should be made at some point in the future, but we think it really needs to be done as a larger project when you can also address the issues of how you get somebody across the highway, you know, leading them down to Business Highway 151 and then just saying you're on your own to cross. You know, that busy highway is not, I think, the best idea. So that really needs to be tackled as a bigger project. So this would be an improvement over what's there now. As I mentioned, it's kind of a compromise, I think, between the two recommendations that you've got from the two committees. So that would be staff's recommendation. Are there any questions?
I have a couple of questions. The sidewalk you're proposing across from the sidewalk on the west side of Allen Street, that sidewalk being proposed, that's a ramp sidewalk with a warning field, I assume?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of a ramp it would be, because that's probably the only part of the site that's essentially flat, but it would be a slight downgrade to the curb, so there would probably be a warning track involved at the end before it goes onto the curb.
You have to.
My next question is, the sidewalks, will they be raised up? In other words, will there be a curb so that the sidewalk simply isn't a marked area on the asphalt or the concrete? In other words, there'll be something that the people can't drive on.
Right, it would be separate from the parking lot itself.
Okay, so that's true for the one that's in red all the way around. There'll be a raised area.
Correct.
Okay.
I think the only exception to that would be right at the front where the handicapped entrance would be, that
Yes,
would be
yes.
graded down.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, now I'm on board here a little bit. I went over and looked at that area, like I mentioned before. I really don't see any reason for sidewalks in that development at this point in time. They're basically sidewalks to nowhere, as I said. Down the road, they may connect those, but it's probably not gonna be very soon. So I personally do not think we need those there.
On top of that too, if there was required to put them down, that's pretty steep. Almost have to be stairs. And then also, if you put them down on 151 Business, and like you talked about, a major improvement down the road here. The guy's gonna put that sidewalk in, and then all of a sudden it's not to the grade you need when the larger improvement comes along, like from the stoplights. Howard and I've talked about it a little bit yesterday, and we've got to put, we don't have no pedestrian crossover at all down there. We'd have to start when we do something at the stoplights and then work it north, but so how do we know where they're gonna be in the right place or not? We'd be ripping them out on somebody.
Other comments, questions? We do have some folks who would like to speak.
I lose you, Joe?
I think it'd be good if the distance between the property line and the retaining wall and the distance between the monument sign and the property line were enough that a sidewalk could be put in at some point in the future if you redid Highway Business 151. I mean, then it would address Dick's question about the right elevation if ultimately that road were ever improved.
Okay. I have a lot of green sheets here, so hopefully I'll catch everybody. But these are the individuals who've indicated they would like to speak about this issue. And so if you could come up to the microphone, Christina Fields and Emily Fields. Followed by Jack Lutke. Followed by Amy Sebo. Victoria Solomon. Okay. Karen. All right, Christina.
Thanks. My name is Christina Fields. I live at 945 7th Avenue, and I'm also the chair of the Community Safe Routes Committee. And for those of you who are new, the purpose of our committee is to plan for safe biking and walking in Platteville. So first off, we need to acknowledge that people are walking here right now. People are crossing here right now. and that there's a neighborhood right here, right now. And the fact that there isn't a sidewalk there right now is a problem, because we have people using that facility and walking in the road, or not being able to go there at all, or walking through a parking lot. So there are people who are doing that right now. So I would encourage you to vote against the waiver, and I've got 3 reasons for it. We do have an existing zoning ordinance that allows us to ask the developer to do it now. And this allows the developer to have to pay for that sidewalk right now. The second reason is that you could say, well, in 20 years we should do it, in 10 years we should do it, with the reconstruction of Business 151 we should do it. Funding-wise, we have no idea when this is going to happen. We know there are people there right now who need to walk, who do walk through there, and they don't have a safe place to be. We have the opportunity with the ordinance to follow the ordinance and to put sidewalks on this property right now. If we were to delay, this means that city staff is going to have to figure out when that's going to happen. They're going to have to monitor the project. They may have to prepay and then charge back. That's an extra burden for the city staff, and it's going to cost more money for that project. Plus, it's going to get built later, and now we have people now who need that sidewalk. The other thing is that someone might say, well, we should just get a grant to this project. And I'm very familiar with these grants, and these grants require, well, one of the first questions they're going to ask is, does your city have a sidewalk ordinance, and does it follow it? And if we have an existing sidewalk ordinance and we're not following it, there's no way we're ever going to get any grant money to put a sidewalk in this location. We've got the developer here now. We've got people here now who need to use the sidewalk. We should install it now. And finally, the busiest thing, or the most important part, is how busy this corridor is. We know we have people walking there. We know that we do not have an existing facility. Time after time, we're coming and we're giving waivers to these businesses in this corridor to waive the sidewalk. And then we keep saying, well, we should put it in later. Sometime we'll put it in later. Let's do it now. People are needing it now. So we need this sidewalk. Please vote against the waiver. Please require the developer to install the sidewalk with their project. Thank you.
Question.
Christina?
Feel.
Question.
You talked about use of corridors. Are you talking about people walking on Ellen Street from the sidewalk up there down to 151?
So yeah, there's the residences that are to the north of the property.
And then people walking on Virgin Avenue down to 151?
Yeah.
And then, so where are they going? Some are walking out along 151 to the east.
They're going to Culver's.
They can go wherever they want to go, right? Not everybody drives. At least 50% of the population is either too young to drive, or they're too old to drive, or they don't want to drive, or they can't afford to drive. So they can walk wherever they want to. They can go wherever they need to go. If we go to the east, that's where the trail is. If we go to the east, that's where a whole business corridor is. If we go to the west, there's a whole entire business corridor. If we go to the north, we've got downtown and other residences. We've got residences on the south side of Business 151. So people are walking there right now.
So your recommendation is to have a sidewalk put in by the developer on the east side of Ellen down to 151, is that correct?
Yes.
Why aren't you recommending a sidewalk on the west side of Ellen, which is an extension of the one up above? Because
I can't, because the developer doesn't own that property. That's a Walgreens property.
That could be, seems to me it could be special assessed.
Well, I felt like I needed to address this parcel, because that's the parcel that's here today.
That's the back of Walgreens.
That should have been addressed when Walgreens, I can only address this parcel with this waiver today.
And this one, there isn't any sidewalk along the east side of Ellen. The only sidewalk along the east side of Ellen is the little half block up by the fire station.
Right, but that's the purpose.
Nothing.
Right, that's the purpose of the ramp, is so that when you walk down Ellen on the west side, you can cross over to the east side of Ellen and walk down that sidewalk on the east side.
Yes, I understand that, but you're recommending a sidewalk go on the east side of Ellen, and the developer pay for that portion.
Yes, in addition to along Business 151 and on Virgin.
To me, it's more logical to put it on the west side,
Right, but I can't request that because the property that's in today is 555 Ellen, it's not Walgreens.
Well, I understand that. But the overall recommendation could be to put it on the west side.
Right, but we're voting either for the waiver or against it, and I'm asking you to vote against it.
What about sidewalk along 151?
I'm recommending that we install sidewalk on 151. I would love there to be a sidewalk on the west side of Ellen. I just didn't think I would muddy the waters by bringing that up.
So basically, you're saying sidewalk on 3 sides?
Yes.
Okay. The next person is Jack Lutke.
I just want to speak to the request for the waiver in general. This is the second one, as Ms. Fields indicated, in this area within the past year. And I think it's a bad precedent for the council to keep considering these waivers in terms of having the developer ready to put his project together. And to me, the sidewalk is the least expensive part of that whole project. And you have no idea what the developer is going to put in as a second tenant in there, which may drive a lot of walking traffic to that site. And to the issue of people going down the hill to 151, they're going in every direction when they get down there. And I think if you sit and watch for a while, you will see that there are a number of people that come into that area and even further down on 151 to go to some of the restaurants. And I've witnessed personally busloads of people getting out, young people at the Country Kitchen location and at the gas station location, and then walking all the way down on the roadway or alongside of the roadway to get to McDonald's or to get to Pizza Hut. And I'm sure Kathy is here from the chamber. They must witness people walking in that area all the time. So I think at some point the council is going to have to discuss with the state an extended sidewalk through that area because of the foot traffic is increasing. The other thing I think that will happen there is that the state will not do anything with that crossing. If they follow their track record with Water Street, that was proposed 12 years before they ever actually acted on fixing Water Street. I think you're probably looking at the funding mechanism now in the state with the major projects they have going on, and that is a state highway. That'll probably be 20 years or longer before they ever step up to the plate. So unless the city is willing to, I don't even know if they can, unless they're willing to step up and handle all of the improvements to that intersection, you're not going to see that in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. So I think the council is going to have to take these steps. And when the developers are there, whether it's the donut shop, don't grant a waiver to that corner when it's developed. Don't grant a waiver to this developer, but allow them to put the sidewalks in as your ordinance requires. Thank you.
Amy Siebel.
Hi, everybody. Should I say my address?
If you want to.
Okay, 455 Lutheran Street. Again, my name's Amy. I moved to Platteville about 5 years ago now, and one of the things I really like about Platteville is that it's a community where you can walk and bike if you want to. Almost everything's within walking distance. And I myself have often walked to Culver's from my neighborhood, and it's a pain in the butt to cross that road. I'll often do it with kids, and it's dangerous and it's scary, and there's no good way to do it. So, for better or worse, this parcel today, 555 Allen Street, is emblematic of a bigger problem. That the city does have a sidewalk ordinance and the city has been waiving it. And what ends up happening when the city waives the ordinance is that the private developer doesn't pay for a sidewalk. They get a little bit of a free savings. And then a few years later, maybe longer, the city will go back because there's enough public demand for a sidewalk and they'll say, let's put the sidewalk in. Or they're reconstructing a road project and they say, while we're doing the reconstruction, we'll put a sidewalk in. And the developer says, well, I'm not gonna pay for that. And the city says, okay, let's pay for it out of the city's money then. And that's happened. It's not unheard of. I think it happened most recently when we redid what street on the west side of town? Over there? I wanna say Camp, but it wasn't Camp, was it? What street was redone and we put sidewalks in over there? Ellen? College. And the city paid for those sidewalks, right? Did we charge assessments to residents for that?
No.
See, okay, thank you. But the case is if we're really looking out for our residents and their safety, which I think is task number 1 for a municipality, and then if we're really looking for how we can be savvy with taxpayer dollars, which is task number 2, then putting the sidewalk in right now when there's a developer who wants to develop is the way to do it and the time to do it. If we don't do it now, odds are really good that the state's not going to redevelop that road for 20 years. It's a state road. They recently did it. They're not going to update it anytime soon. And so that means we're either going to wait 20 years for that sidewalk or we're going to pay for it out of our own pockets probably. And the fact of the matter is that sidewalk's used now. I use it now. I see people using it now. It's a safety issue. When somebody gets hit by a car, that's going to be really bad. And if we can get one property to put sidewalk in, we can start talking about assessing other properties because the argument nobody else has sidewalk will no longer apply. And then we can start really dealing with the problem. So I just want to make a couple more points real quickly, is that you can see the people here tonight are generally people without kids because I have time to come to meetings at night. But sidewalks are typically an issue that really affect young children. And the people who have young children can't make time to make these meetings. So I want to just point out, I appeal to you to count our voices or weight them even more heavily because people with kids can't be here, even though they would choose to be here if they had the time probably. And then finally, I'm really honored that Platteville was nominated to be an All-American city. And one of the reasons it was nominated was because we are a community-oriented city and we do practice sustainability. And walking and biking is the future of Platteville. And so we need to start making a point now of really truly encouraging that. So I sincerely hope you consider not waiving the sidewalk, but just applying the ordinance as it would stand. The developer already is putting in expensive retaining walls. I know that it's inconvenient, but they're choosing to develop on an inconvenient parcel. So I'm sorry that it will cost the developer more money, but they're already paying a lot of money for a lot of other things, and sidewalks are pretty nominal cost probably relative to everything else. So thank you.
Karen Rogill.
Good evening. First I'm gonna My name is Karen Rogelja. I live at 87 East Main Street, number 7. I am here to speak against waiving the sidewalk ordinance requirement. The photos that I just handed out were taken actually this afternoon by a colleague of mine, looking east from the intersection of Business 151 and Water. And they show a group of students crossing right where the property in question is on 151, and they were going over to Culver's. So that's just an illustration of what everyone's been saying here so far, which is that this is being used, as Christina pointed out, it's being used now. It's not safe. It's generally being used by younger student age kids. And this is summer. It was light out at 5 p.m. when this was occurring, but in the winter it's dark, even more dangerous. I also wanted to follow on Amy's point that we were nominated as an All-America city, and the criteria for being an All-America city are inclusiveness, which is the recognition and involvement of diverse segments and perspectives in community decision-making. And as Amy pointed out, there aren't families here that are able to speak. I don't know if people with disabilities have been able to have input when the sidewalks come up to get waived. Also, innovation is the second criteria, creative use and leveraging of community resources. And that comes back again to what Amy was saying, that maybe this is the best maximization of our resources. And then impact, significant and specific community achievements, projects that address the community's most important needs. So I personally feel strongly that if we don't start somewhere, the sidewalks to nowhere are gonna be inevitable. and this will never get done. So let's start connecting things and building sidewalks so that kids and families and students and everyone in Platteville can walk. Thank you.
All right, that concludes the people who have asked to speak. Again, Victoria Solomon registered against. Cindy Tang registered against. Busy street next to residential area. People and students will walk. Let's make it safe. Lynn Berger registered against. Robin Tim registered against. And Mary Penn registered against. We need complete streets. I live on this street. Those are the comments that we have from the public. So, council discussion.
Is there any plan for sidewalks? I guess the question is to you, Howard, along 151.
I have a concept in my mind that at some point in time, as these folks have identified, that when and if when Business 151 needs to be reconstructed or rehabilitated, to me that's the time to look at a larger scale project that would include upgrading the crossing at Water Street so that it's better for pedestrian access, and then have either sidewalk or combined use trails on both sides of the street to get people along and to and from those businesses. We want to direct people to cross at safe locations, such as at a signalized intersection at Water Street if possible, but we can't do that unless we have the pedestrian signals for them. Business 151 is just that. It's a business route. It is not a state highway, and Business 151 will not be paid for by the state. Water Street, as Highway 80 and 81, can and will be paid for by the state at some time in the future. I don't recall, I was not here when it was done last. I think it was like 1990 or thereabouts for those who were here. So it's probably not on their schedule for a while yet either. You know, these things are expensive. They're time consuming. Like I say, at this point in our budgetary woes, I don't see that being done with city dollars for 10 plus years.
Who would be responsible, Howard, for snow removal on these sidewalks, particularly if it were along the 151? Would it be the business?
Yes, the business, as the adjoining property owner, would be responsible for snow removal on all sidewalks that would be installed.
And does it have to be cement? Could it be like what you have alongside Kmart there? What is it?
East Side Road?
We do not have a requirement that it has to be concrete. It could be asphalt or some other material. It's just that 4 or 5 foot wide is very difficult to construct. It would have to be wider, 8 to 10 feet wide, like those trails. Is a much easier to construct in asphalt.
Yeah, I suppose the ones though along Virgin and Ellen would have to be cement because they'd be connecting to existing sidewalks, right?
It doesn't have to be. It would be a choice of the developer, but like I said, part of this would be the amount of space in that terrace area between the property line and the back of the curb, and the constructability of asphalt in that area. It would probably be very difficult to make asphalt, especially on the Ellen Street side.
Yeah, I'm talking more on the 151.
Business 151, that's what I was alluding to earlier, is when and if we do this as a complete plan, it might it would be one idea to be reviewed as part of the planning process, whether or not to make that a 10-foot asphalt path like we have up on Water Street or on East Side Road.
Aren't we somewhat getting the, what do you want to say, the cart ahead of the horse? It looks to me like maybe the city should be getting the highway ready for that pedestrian traffic, then have the property owners, that, which we can do by ordinance, put their sidewalks down to there. Because if we do this now, we have the sidewalks coming down to there, then we got no place for them to go. They just any place across the street. We don't have no crosswalk set up. We don't have no sidewalk going down to the Water Street intersection. So it just looks to me like we're getting the horse ahead of the cart. I mean, the cart ahead of the horse. Don't even make sense what I said.
That's,
in other words, the city's got to get something. We've got to get something ready first for these people to attach to that sidewalk.
that was the argument that these people were making, is that if you wait, it'll be 10+ years before anything like that happens.
Other comments?
You talked about it, Howard. So the placement of the sidewalk in the future along 151 wouldn't necessarily be next to the property line. Like in a residential, we usually put it next to the property line, outside the property line, in a residential.
Yes. In a residential area, the location of the sidewalk is the side closest to the house is at the property line.
Right.
But there's no requirement that it be there. And in a case like this along Business Highway 151, there would be no requirement that the sidewalk necessarily has to be against the property line. It could be away from the property line for many reasons, topography or other issues.
My next question is, do we have any mechanism as far as collecting money and have it in escrow for the purpose of building sidewalk in the future?
That would, as far as I know, that would only be through a developer's agreement, and I don't know that there's one that's required for this development. If we had other mechanisms that we needed to do, we could ask them for a developer's agreement that could include something like that.
Is there going to be a developer's agreement, Joe?
No, I mean,
Oh.
the use and the building are permitted under the ordinance. The only approval is the retaining wall, which you already acted on, and the sidewalk issue.
But there could be a developer's agreement if we required that. I mean, right now there isn't, but if sidewalks aren't waived and it said that the only way that waiver could be is that if money was escrowed, then there'd have to be a developer's agreement. Just because there's not one now doesn't mean there can't be one.
That's correct.
Is that right?
Right.
Right. I have a couple of questions. First of all, the sidewalk that's currently proposed on the south part of the building and the one on the east, are those going to be designated public sidewalks?
Well, those will be located on private property, so there'll be private sidewalks, but as the Plan Commission had said, we would like those to be available to any member of the public that chooses to use those, and the developer was in agreement to that.
Then my question remains, will they be designated public sidewalks? Is the developer willing to designate them as public sidewalks?
You mean with a sign or on a map, or can you be more?
You know, so that he understands that these are public sidewalks, that he can't prevent people from using them.
I don't know how to answer your question, I guess.
Okay, well, I mean, basically what I see is the developer has proposed these sidewalks. These sidewalks are really a benefit to his development. I mean, he's gonna have to put a sidewalk along the edge of that building anyway. If this is his proposal, in lieu of providing a public sidewalk, then I would certainly want them designated as public sidewalks so they would know that. The second question I have pertains to the topography. And I can't measure that. But I do know that for handicap accessibility in terms of sidewalks, is it even feasible to put is it, would that sidewalk meet, if we said you have to put a sidewalk on the east side on Virgin in the terrace area down to 151, is that even possible because of the topography and handicap accessibility? I don't know that. I do know I drove up Ellen Street today and that street, and they're pretty straight up. I don't think you could be on the top in a wheelchair and come down. I don't think you could be at the bottom in a wheelchair and go up.
There is an exemption in the ADA rules that state that a sidewalk may be placed at the same grade as the street that it's adjacent to, even if it does not strictly meet the normal ADA rules.
Okay.
But you're correct, it would be very dangerous for someone in a wheelchair, for example, to go up or down either of those streets because of the grade.
Of the grade. That's what I thought. When we approved the development for that piece of property that says Dunkin' Donuts is on the way, is it not true that we made a stipulation that they had to reserve the site, the amount for sidewalk, and that it would be at the property owner's expense if that sidewalk were ever put in?
We had stipulated they had to grade the site where the sidewalk would be located to accommodate a future installation of sidewalk. It would be in the right of way so that it's not property that they could use for other uses of their own. And I think that was a condition that they were aware that they could be assessed for the cost of that future installation.
That it would be likely that they would be assessed
Correct.
at that time for the cost of the installation. I have this area is becoming more and more problematic, in my opinion, in terms of pedestrians. It's very unfortunate that the Walgreens got built without sidewalks. That was prior to my being, but it's very unfortunate because now not only will Culver's be on that corner, but Barry Yo, which is another space that will attract, potentially attract people, and in fact, a donut shop. This is going to be an incredibly intense area for pedestrians. I have a concern about building a sidewalk down on Virgin, down on Ellen, with no crosswalk, because it almost says to people,
Your life in your hands.
take your life. I also have a concern about not building it because people are using it. So it's just a really difficult area.
That's why I say what I did about the cart ahead of the horse. The city, we need to get something done down there and then have these people bring their sidewalks to it.
Well, I think minimally that there should be, that we should require the same thing that was required of the property where the Dunkin' Donuts, that I'm just gonna call it Dunkin' Donuts property, that area be retained for a sidewalk. So if that means moving the retaining wall farther to the northeast, that's just what has to happen. But I think we need to retain the space along that Business 151 corridor for a sidewalk. I was recently at a listening session, and in fact, the person who came to that listening session talked about the great amount of pedestrian traffic that's now developing between the corner where Kmart is and all the way out to the Walmart, and there are no sidewalks. and how people are now starting to walk in the highway so they have some place to walk. We need to address these issues somehow. And one of the, we have to retain, if the sidewalk is not put in along Business 151 at this time, we have to retain that the developer will have to retain that space and understand that they will likely be assessed for sidewalk in the future. I think that's a minimal for me.
Okay, yes, Mike?
Joe, isn't there, or I don't know, but is there a state regulation that says there can only be a certain grade to a sidewalk before you have to put steps in?
No, what the ADA requirements are is to try to eliminate stairs wherever possible, and that's what I was alluding to earlier. Normally, in a normal topography area, you have a limited slope that you can go for an ADA accessible sidewalk. You can increase it slightly, and then you have to have flat spots for resting and things like that. But they also recognize that there are places, and Platteville is not unique in that regard, where you have severe topography, and they do allow sidewalks to be placed at the same grade as the street. Because if you were to try to do it to normal ADA standards, you go from Business 151 up Ellen Street, for example, you may not catch up until you get to Pine Street. You'd have the sidewalk way down in and all these houses way up here before you'd catch back up, and that's not feasible or practical by any means. So, I've seen it in other places with severe topography that basically, I don't know that it's necessarily required, but I have seen basically signs that say, caution to anybody who's using a wheelchair, kind of like they do on steep grades for trucks, caution, steep grade ahead. That's about all you can do with something like this.
Okay, I'd like to move this forward. It seems to me we were talking about a lot of different ideas. One is, the Plan Commission recommendation, which was to waive it, the community safe routes, which would like to see sidewalks, as I understand it, on both streets and down on 151. And then the compromise that was presented by our staff, which is that the developer has said that they would be willing to put a sidewalk on Ellen Street and on Virgin Avenue, and then a cross sidewalk at the end of their building, or basically at the end of the building by the parking lot, so that people could access Virgin and Ellen, but they would not then have a sidewalk going down to the highway. So we need to, and we talked about a developer's agreement, whether or not, that's something that we want to suggest. And I'm not sure if anyone knows what they'd like to do with this evening, but we have to give the staff some kind of direction and tell the developer something. So looking for some kind of a motion, suggestion, the will of the council is this evening.
Well, I would move to deny the waiver.
We have a motion to deny. Is there a second? That would mean the developer would be required to put the sidewalks in as our ordinance states.
Second.
A motion and a second to deny the waiver. And again, as I understand that, that means the developer is required to put in the sidewalk
Correct.
at their expense.
All street frontages at their expense.
And it would be all the way down Ellen, all the way down Virgin, and also at the end of their property line on 151.
Correct.
Okay.
That's how I understand.
And what about the internal sidewalk?
That'll still be there no matter
It'll
what.
still be there?
Well,
Because
It's not
that's something
required.
that makes
that's
the-
not part of the ordinance. That's
that would-
internal sidewalk.
Okay.
So the internal sidewalk that's suggested here would not be part of that. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Roll call vote, please.
Nichols,
Yes.
Bonin,
No,
Killian,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes.
Den,
No.
Doss,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you, that was a good conversation. Difficult decision when we work with developers and we want them to develop in our city, but I hope they appreciate that we are obviously receiving more and more concerns about sidewalks. Next item, tourism entity agreement. Some information, some changes suggested to the contract with the tourism entity in the city. Any questions or comments on that? Otherwise, a motion would be appreciated.
Move to approve the revised tourism entity agreement as proposed.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please. Oh,
Nick,
Go ahead.
Yeah, Dick or Patrice, whoever wants to claim credit for that one. You got
Patrice was first.
Okay.
Nichols,
Yes.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes.
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
motion carries.
Next item, award project number 813 for highway painting. Howard, is that you?
Yes, we do centerline stripes and miscellaneous street markings on different city streets. We contract that out because it's done in epoxy paint. Our forces do not have the capability of doing that. Epoxy paint lasts for about 5 years. The contractor usually does it in less than a day. We had 2 bidders. Both have done work for the city for striping. We had, the low bidder was Century Fence, a total bid of $20,739.10, and it is within budget.
Is there a
Move
motion?
to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. We'll vote.
Nichols,
Yes.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes.
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
motion carries.
And next is the award the project 913 weed and grass mowing.
Yes, this is an annual contract that we use to enforce our tall grass and noxious weed ordinance. There are 2 parts to this contract. The first part is for mowing large areas, vacant parcels of about an acre or more. The second part is for our normal residential type lawns. We had 4 bidders, as you can see. The low bidder was Mr. Blindert, Oak Street Curb out of Boscobel, Wisconsin. Minimum charge of $25 per location, $35 per hour for mowing lawns for both the residential type and the larger areas. We have not worked with this contractor before. However, we've done some reference checks and have heard that he does reputable work. And so we're recommending that we go with Oak Street Curb Appeal for those bid prices.
Who did you have last year, Howard?
I'm sorry, I don't recall that, but we've had.
This is somebody different, in other words.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I mean, we've had Four Seasons do it before. We've had Southwest Lawn Care do it before. We've had other folks do it before. I can't recall which one did it last year.
That's fine.
Mike?
I have some information that I'd like to pass along to the council members. If you look, all these bids except one is from outside of the Platteville area, okay? And since there's absolutely no tax dollars involved in this issue, okay, we don't really have to take the lowest bid, okay? My point is that Four Seasons, they're here in Platteville, they spend their money in Platteville, they pay their taxes here in Platteville, they live here. I think that the bid should be awarded to them. In this case, because there are no tax dollars involved, it's not an essential that you take the lowest bid.
Good point. The rate that Oak Street Curb is offering, Howard, is that cheaper than what it was last year, do you know?
Yes, it is. Last year, last year the contract prices were similar to what Four Seasons is offering for this year.
I make a motion, we award contract 19-13 weed and grass mowing to Oak Street curb appeal at the prices proposed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll vote.
Nichols?
Yes.
Bonin?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes.
Stockhausen?
Yes.
Steiner?
No.
Den?
No.
Dawes?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item, funding for All-America City Award presentation. Larry,
Certainly.
details to give us on that?
City staff applied for an All-America City Award for the city of Platteville. We did so in conjunction with several of our economic development partners. The All-America City Award is a national award, national recognition for the city of Platteville. And Platteville was fortunate, and we are the only city in the state of Wisconsin to be identified as a finalist. Obviously, this award has some expenses, and that's what the staff memo is to address. We are estimating or guessing that it's going to cost around $1,000 a person. The flights that we would buy would be probably higher than if we had 6 months, 9 months notice. But given the timeline we have, if we were to buy an airplane ticket, we'd want to do it as soon as possible. We are also estimating that we're hoping to get a group of about 15 people to go to Denver, Colorado to help make the presentation on this. If people are interested, there are presentations on YouTube of past applicants, and it seems pretty involved, the stuff that has to be done in order to complete the nomination process in front of a jury. So the team of economic development partners are trying to select people who can help us on the 3 points that we were applied for. Our entrepreneurship, the veterans organization and the honor roll at City Park, and then our sustainability efforts. 15 people is about half of what other cities send. The average is 30. So we're trying to be somewhat conservative with our approach. We're also are looking for numerous different grant opportunities, many of which our timelines don't line up. But we do have an application into Alliant Energy, and we have another one into the Community Fund, and we're looking for other grant opportunities as well. And we're hoping that we can raise the money that's necessary to send 15 people, or at least $15,000. However, those grant opportunities are not here right now. We don't know whether we'll get funding. So that puts us in an unusual position, and that is the sooner we buy our plane tickets and make arrangements, the less expensive they'll be. What I'm asking today is if the City Council would consider fronting approximately half of the funds, or $7,500, to help get the grant, to help get the process started. I would anticipate that should funds be raised beyond the second $7,500, we would reimburse the city for their expenses. At this point, I have no idea how much grant funding we will receive, or if we will receive any. So this is something that the city would benefit from. It's something that the recognition would certainly help our community. However, there is an expense, and as elected officials, that'll be something you'll have to weigh. But we don't have any funding at this point to get this process started. So staff is sitting unsure how to proceed. I mean, we can't proceed with making arrangements until we have funding.
Questions? Comments? Yes.
This group of people that we would be sending out there, who would choose or select the people to go?
Well, right now there is a group of our economic development partners that help put this grant or this award activity together. It includes the Platteville Business Incubator Executive Director, the Chamber Executive Director, Main Street Executive Director, myself, Angela Donovan, who is the Communications Specialist who helped write the grant, and Melissa Paul of PADEC, the Platteville Industrial Development Corporation. There's about 5 or 6 of us that are sitting around a table trying to figure out, number one, who needs to be there, number two, what do we need to present about, how are we going to do our presentation, and we also have to be able to answer questions on those 3 main topics: entrepreneurship, the Veterans Honor Roll, and our sustainability efforts. And much of this has to do with our close connection to the veterans, our connection to the university. The sustainability efforts that have been undertaken on campus have been major accomplishments for our community, as well as their partnership in helping with entrepreneurship. They've recently created a minor in entrepreneurship, and Melissa Paul is teaching some of those classes. So I think that the people that go are going to be people who are tied to these 3 main issues. And right now the group threw out some names at our last meeting. We're asking people, and we're finding out whether or not they're available during this presentation period. So to answer your question, I don't have a list of people at this point, but I can tell you that it'll be a combination of different organizations working together to stress the 3 points that we applied for.
Thank you.
And Larry, in addition, while at this conference in Denver, do the attendees have the opportunity to attend seminars or workshops?
Yes, there is a workshop the first day that applicants are asked if they'd like to attend. We also have to man a booth. We have to have a table that talks about Platteville and tells other applicants about us. And then we have a 10-minute presentation and a 10-minute question and answer period. And we're also encouraged to sit in and watch other communities. If our community is exposed to what other communities are doing that's worthy of recognition, perhaps we can come back to Platteville with other ideas of how to make our community better based on what other cities are doing. So I think that there's definitely a learning opportunity here for those who go.
Larry, you've mentioned $15,000 for basically to send this group to Denver.
I really don't have an exact number. I'm doing the best I can at estimating it.
I understand that.
Okay.
I have a greater concern, and that is that there is, I see that there's supposed to be videos, and that there are supposed to be slideshows, and that there are supposed to be other things. So who's developing the total budget? I hear 15,000 this week for travel. Am I going to hear 15,000 next week for presentations and 15,000 the week after for booth?
I'm fearful if you hear that, it will be unacceptable. So to answer your question, I don't anticipate additional expenses. The group is still, we had 1 meeting since being nominated as a finalist, since being identified as a finalist. And there is a lot of work that needs to be done yet. We really don't have a plan at this point, and we're still struggling to put one together. We have to figure out what exactly we're going to do for our presentation and what costs are going to be associated with doing that. A lot of organizations did dances, did skits, talked about the history of their city. We threw out the idea of having a banner as a background prop, but maybe we can get that donated. I don't know. At this point, we're not sure what our expenses are going to be.
Would Kathy have any input that you wouldn't have?
Kathy, you're welcome to come if you have anything you want to add. Kathy is certainly a member of this group and contributed quite significantly. So.
Sorry, caught you off guard.
I will tell you that other groups are, some of our nonprofits in the community are going to be asked to make donations, and I know some of them have already stepped forward with donations. So I anticipate this to be quite a fundraising activity for the community.
I think Larry put it very well, the situation, and we're doing our best. We realize that there are things that we need to have done, that there needs to be a presentation, and I think I hope I'm not speaking alone for the group, but it is our intent to go there and show the community of Platteville to our very best ability. And I know that we have resources internally, anything that the chamber can do to help with, you know, producing displays for the exhibit or something, we're definitely going to be doing. I think we have opportunity with, between university, maybe Southwest Tech. I know it's getting close to the end of the year, but maybe some of the videoing type things we can get some of our community people to help. But it is a significant honor to be, and to be honest, I'll admit, Larry, I wasn't sure when we first sent the application in. I was really shocked that we were considered as a finalist. So, and we are the only community in the state of Wisconsin. So if we would happen to win this award, it's pretty significant. So,
Kathy, is this the kind of, I mean, you talked about grants, so is this the kind of opportunity that we could approach perhaps WEDC or the State Department of Tourism for grant funding?
I know that tourism does not have funding for that. WEDC, maybe, it's a possibility. Like Larry said, though, this is coming up really fast, and we have met. We have another meeting scheduled. We're doing homework to bring to that meeting to come up with some more definitive ideas of what we want to do. But anything that the city would be able to help with would be sincerely appreciated. And I think the size of the group is probably going to depend, obviously, on the amount of money that we can raise. And I agree with Larry. I would not anticipate another request of the city for anything else that we need to have to prep us to go.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the proposed budget amendment transferring $7,500 from the city assessor's budget to the city manager's expense budget for the All-American Award, with the understanding that this $7,500, or what is eventually, so it would be no more than $7,500, and that in that you have proposed it's about half of the travel expenses, that we would get the budget, and that we would then fund up to $7,500 or 1/2 of the travel expenses. So if the travel expenses are less, then the amount transferred would be less.
I second that.
You understand the motion?
I do.
No, I'm not I see
You're saying 1/2 of the travel expenses.
you said $15,000 for the travel. Is that right?
It's $15,000 is the target for the fundraising. I don't know what travel is going to be. We're expecting $300 to $400 an airplane ticket. If you're going to do half of the travel, then we have to find the other half before we can buy the plane tickets, right? Okay.
No, because there's more in travel than plane tickets. There's
That's going to be the biggest. I'm anticipating the plane tickets are being the biggest portion. If
all right, what I really want is I want the budget.
Okay.
All right. I'm willing to go to up to a maximum of $7,500, but I want the budget that goes with it.
So you're,
If there's not a $15,000 budget, then it would not be more than half of what the budget is.
Okay.
so you're taking out the word travel costs, because
I'll take out the word
that might be
travel.
confusing. Okay, is that agreeable with the second? All right. Do you want Jan to read it back, or?
Oh,
Gender-
please.
Okay. Everybody,
I make a motion, we can allocate up to $7,500 with the understanding that we get a budget that shows this. And that if the budget isn't $15,000, that we allocate half.
Right.
But not more than 7,500.
Alright.
Second her adjustment.
Barb and Barb are saying it's okay. They understand the motion. All right. This does require a 2/3 vote because it is not budgeted in our city budget right now, so it will take a 2/3 vote of the council to pass. So, Jan?
Nichols,
Yes.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes.
Den,
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That ends the action items. Now we're on to information and discussion. Mr. Browning, I will note that you did request to speak, but the citizen comments portion of the meeting is passed. So I would suggest that if you want to, this shouldn't take too long. If you want to say something to me or to the city manager, that would be fine. Or please come to the next meeting. But again, if it was on an issue, I would certainly say now would be the time to do it, but there's nothing on our agenda that works with that, so. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Browning had, after we had already gotten into the action items, asked to speak. It just says citizen comments, recommendation and request, and it says put in jail. Again, there's nothing on our agenda that fits into that description right now, so the council has a citizens' comments and observation earlier in the meeting, and we're well past that, you know. So if you could come to the next meeting, you know, you're welcome to have a say then, but I think that in the interest of time, we're going to go on to the information and discussion items right now. Mr. Mayo, I'm just gonna go on to the information and discussion. We can certainly talk to Mr. Browning after the meeting. The first item is resolution, adoption of City of Platteville fee schedule. There's information in our packet about the fact that fees are in a dollar amount, often in our ordinances, which requires us to have an ordinance change. And then we have to publish that ordinance change, so in an attempt to change the cost or keep the cost down, we would pull out the fee, the extra dollar amount, and have a separate resolution. So that's something that the staff has been looking at.
I have a question about that.
Yep.
So does this mean that the fees would change without people being informed?
No, it would still require a public city council meeting. You'd still approve a resolution.
Okay.
The intent here is that we have many fees scattered throughout our code book, and it would be more convenient to both the public and staff if we had a fee resolution that identified every single fee in the code book, so that everybody could just automatically turn to a spreadsheet and say, okay, the fee for this is that amount. It also cuts down a little bit on publication expenses and changing our code. If you had to change your code every time you wanted to change a fee, eventually what will happen is you'll find fees that you haven't addressed in 5 or 10 years. This way, it's all in one resolution, and you review it every year right before the budget. It just seemed to be a bit of a housekeeping matter, but also something where it'll help the city council be aware of all of the fees that are charged and what the amounts are, and what the changes are from year to year.
I have a question.
Yes.
If you take them off the municipal code and just put them under like a resolution.
Yes.
Doesn't that also make it easier to change the fees at your convenience instead of leaving them on the municipal code?
It still takes city council action. So if the city council were to change an ordinance, it would be the same process as changing the resolution, except you would not be publishing in the paper.
That's the only difference?
Dan, do you know the answer to that specifically?
That's the main difference.
Okay.
Is the publication
'Cause
cost.
My concern would have been, or is, we don't want to make fees schedule changes much more easier, so we can all of a sudden, hey, we need some more money, so let's raise some fees real quick.
Well, and that would be, the council would be doing that. It wouldn't just be staff changing fees and willy-nilly. It would be a.
In fact,
For the council.
where it says the fee for a conditional use permit is $200, in the code book, it would say the fee for a conditional use permit shall be set by the city council and amended from time to time via resolution. So it'll always be coming back to the city council. The staff will not have authority to change fees.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next item, resolution approving exemption request for Evergreen Road reconstruction funded by the T-Grant funding.
What that is what we found was when we were talking about Evergreen Road before, we were asking for an exemption to not install any sidewalks or any pathways whatsoever. Under the Complete Streets law, any street that is funded by federal or state dollars, the basic requirement is to have a street, bike lanes on the street itself, and sidewalks on both sides of the street. That is the base condition that's allowed in the law. If you want something other than that, then you have to apply for an exemption that has to be approved by the local Common Council as a resolution. In this case, what we are asking is that we have a shared use pathway instead of sidewalk and bike lanes. So it's technically an exemption to the law, but it's in keeping with what the council has asked staff to do.
Question.
Yeah.
Howard, is this also the portion where you're talking about narrowing the road because of this?
That was what we had discussed at a previous council meeting. That was part of the compromise in order to allow for that shared use path to go in there and fit with the topography that we have because of the high bank on the north side and the sloping away on the south side. We felt that if we narrowed the street, moved it to the south a little bit, then we would have room for the shared use pathway on the north side next to the industry park properties.
Okay, with the increased traffic that will be there with the large milk trucks, for example, they come in, they use dummy wheels, okay, for lack of a better term, that all what it is an extra axle so they can carry an excessive amount of weight for the DOT and be legal. Now, if we narrow that roadway, then we're increasing the increasing the tightness of the turning radius to turn off of that road, okay? You don't have that extra 5 feet to make that turn. And I understand you're looking at making that not a concrete surface, but making it an asphalt surface. With our temperatures here, and those dummy wheels, they don't turn, they slide, okay? Now we're talking about putting a blacktop roadway in there, narrowing it, increasing all these problems. You're looking at turning that road up a lot faster. And why do we need a walkway through an industrial park area? We don't really need bicycles and pedestrian walking where these big trucks are going to be, and making bigger trucks and a narrower road.
The Evergreen project is coming up for information and discussion too, Ken, so I don't know. Okay.
Add something to what Mike was saying.
Okay.
One possibility is to put in concrete at the intersections.
Is that a question?
No, his
Mr.
comment
Tilly?
was
Okay.
in relationship to the turning radius and having asphalt. Okay. Anything else on the T-Grant funding exemption? If not, I'm going to move on to the Broadway project.
Okay. Yes, we opened the bids for Broadway Street reconstruction. The bids came in under budget, and as we've looked at, we do have an alternate for concrete pavement in lieu of asphalt as an option. In this case, the price differential for concrete versus asphalt is less than 5% of the base bid. You know, I think that that's Broadway is also a street that is used by heavy trucks, very heavily trafficked. It currently is concrete overlaid with asphalt in most of the areas. I believe that the extra cost for the concrete in this instance is worth it, and in both instances, whether we go with the base bid or the alternate, they're both under the budget that we had established for the project.
And would it be the same bidder?
Yes, the same bidder.
We do have one individual who has asked to speak about the Broadway and the Evergreen projects. Jared, and you're gonna have to help me with your last name, Jared.
Branching.
All right.
Branching, like the cereal. I'm Jared with Iverson Construction. Here to talk about the option of concrete versus asphalt. I believe in my product. Our company believes in our product. You've mentioned intersections and things like that. There are guidances to design for intersections, increasing the oil, the type of oil, type of mix. Down here we're blessed with some very angular mixes. They are resistant to rutting. For intersections, we would want to probably maybe look at upping our liquid binder grade, the asphalt, the liquid asphalt. Howard mentioned it was 5%, but just the pavement of this project would be 20% more, 19 point something. For just the pavement, concrete versus black, you're paying 20% more for that pavement structure. I heard a lot about money tonight. $37,000 is a lot of money. And that's what you'd be paying more for the concrete. Dan's not here from Delta, the engineer on the project. I don't know if we're getting the same cross-section, competing cross-section. We're getting 4.5 inches of asphalt versus 8 inches of concrete. If we were to get an extra 20% of asphalt, we could get 6 inches of asphalt, which is what we have out on Water Street, 5.5 inches. So I think, we're not comparing apples to apples. And to just say it's 5% more to get concrete, no, it's 20% more. We've also heard a lot about green pavements. Our pavement's 100% recyclable. We at Iverson recycle 40,000 ton of mix a year, at least. We also recycle shingles. Our industry recycles tires, glass, and then aggregates. We are the only 100% recyclable pavement. So in an effort to make the city more green, I think asphalt's the better choice. Any questions?
Thank you.
So, just a minute, I do have a question. So you said the concrete pavement is 8 inches?
Yes.
And the blacktop?
4.5.
4.5.
Right, Clay? 4.5.
But when you did the pavement on Water Street? Or
yes. The paving we did through the DOT last year on Water Street was 5.5.
Okay.
When you got out of town, that was 4.5.
Okay, so north of town.
Okay, thank you. So the other, that was the Broadway project that Howard was just talking about. The other one is the Evergreen project. Howard, if you'd like to mention a little bit about that.
Yes. That one, because of the shorter distance, that one would add 18% to the cost of the project. Jared would probably talk about the difference between the asphalt and the concrete portion only. Mine was the overall cost of the project. Mr. Den has a point regarding the turning movements, but as Jared said, there are alternatives that can significantly reduce the chance of rutting in terms of asphalt. The other issue that I'm looking at here is that as of right now, the T grant would be for 50% of the costs up to $160,000. So at this point, the remaining costs would be paid out of the TIF money, TIF number 6, using the base bid in asphalt. The city would have about $177,000 that would come out of the TIF tax portion of the for the account. And like I say, if we added in concrete pavement, then it would be a little bit more expensive. So we just need to look at how we're paying for it, what the issues are.
I have a question. Didn't we approve this funding based on getting a certain amount of a grant?
I don't think amount was referenced.
I thought that there was an amount proposed and that we approved this project based on receiving a grant of X amount. I can look back in my budget materials.
I don't recall an amount, but I do recall the contingency that we have to get the grant.
Right, and I thought my recollection was $300,000, and I don't know why that's my recollection.
Okay.
But I thought that there was there was an initial thought that this would be $600,000. Does anybody else remember this, or is this just my?
I remember that we talked about a grant, Barb. I do not remember the numbers either.
But I'm almost positive we talked that there was something said about it was a $600,000 project, and that half of that would come from a grant, and that we approved this based on getting that grant and having.
Okay. Well, it's perhaps a possibility that the scenario has changed. I mean, I can go back in my notes as well.
Yeah.
We've got 2 weeks to follow up on that and get back to you.
I don't, maybe it's a different road, but my recollection is.
Evergreen?
Pardon?
Talking Evergreen?
Right. Well, that's what we're talking right now, but I mean, I'm just talking about my recollection,
Here on
and
the
I'm not
sheet.
sure it was Evergreen or if it was a different road.
Okay, so you'll
We'll
bring back that.
review that for next time.
Okay, yep, have that information for next time. Okay, the last item, IT needs assessment. Larry, I think this is for you.
Yeah. Last council meeting, well, 2 council meetings ago, we heard about the pecan network and how the city of Platteville is seeing speeds up to 100 times faster. 10 times faster. What we're still having some problems with is how the interior network of our computer system is designed. There are still some switches and network issues as to some of the computers still are not increasing in speed. We're also having days when our networks are down. It grows a little bit frustrating when you have 80 employees or 30 employees come to work and the network's down and nobody can get on their computer. I guess I just want to get a consultant to come in here and evaluate our network completely independent from whatever service we're using now. And maybe they can tell us what our problem is, what needs to be fixed to increase our reliability, or maybe they can give us a thumbs up and say, your network's good, there's not much you can do about this. But either way, I know that there is a problem, and I just want someone to come in and tell me if it's a problem that we should be addressing in a different way, or if our existing service is doing well. So what I did was I contacted the firm called CompuNet that the school district uses, that the new Roundtree Commons uses, and asked them what it would cost for them to come in and look at our complete computer network and determine if they had any recommendations for us on how to improve it. I'll be honest, the cost came in a little bit higher than I anticipated. They're proposing an idea of $5,800. And obviously I identified a source as to where that money could come from, but ultimately it's up to the city council whether or not this is something that you'd like to see done. I think it's a problem when we have employees come to work and we're not able to access our network. And I'd like to see that problem solved and become more reliable. But is it a $5,000 problem? I don't know how to measure lost productivity given an unknown of how many days our network will be down in the next year. It's something that all I'd be doing is guessing. And I'm asking the council to consider allowing me to hire a consultant to come in and evaluate our current system.
So I have my question again is more about what we're buying.
Yeah. We're buying
I'd like
somebody's
to
time.
see what kind of, what kind of deliverables are gonna be. What are our expectations, what are their expectations? I mean, it seems to me for $5,800, we should have some kind of understanding going in
Yep.
as to what deliverables we're going to expect,
Okay.
and,
I
They can
had,
solve the problem.
unfortunately.
Well, I mean, deliverables that, they're gonna come in and do what? They're gonna spend how many hours? I mean,
We do have that. Unfortunately, it did not get in the packet, and I'll make sure it gets in for the next time. So I've
Yeah,
got it
Mike.
for you. It's just an error must have occurred in the staff level, and we'll make sure it's in your packet for next meeting.
All right, that concludes the information and discussion. The next item would be a work session, and before we turn off the cameras, I think I would like to ask the council members, are you interested in having a work session on the TIF presentation that we received this evening? Do you want to sit down and discuss it a little bit yet tonight, or do you want to have another work session at a different night?
Is there gonna be another session,
Well, one of the
May
things.
something?
Yeah, one of the ideas is to have another session on May 9th, which is a Thursday evening, and I don't know if we'd set a time on that.
No, staff threw that out as a possibility for another meeting. We ran into some scheduling issues with the council, with getting Vanderwall and Associates here, and basically getting all of the partners in the same room. And we felt the 23rd, because we had a meeting this evening, would have been the best date. Well, you could see at the meeting that we were a little bit crunched for time from 6 to 6:50. And so, if you believe that we maybe need another meeting to explore our partners' opinions further, we could certainly set that up for May 9th. We could ask our partners for a written memo on what they would like to see, or we could ask them to come to another city council meeting. There's a lot of options here, and staff threw out the idea of maybe having another meeting with the partnership, with our economic development partners on May 9th. But it's truly up to what your comfort level is and what kind of input you want from our partners.
And I understand that Vanderwall is available to come
Yes.
back as well, if we would like him to be there to answer more questions. He certainly is knowledgeable. So,
I thought that that Scott did a very nice and pretty thorough presentation. Personally, I'd like to see this meeting on the 9th, and I would like to ask each partner to come back with, after hearing this, and I think when I looked through, it appeared that almost everyone was represented tonight, so it would seem to me that those economic development partners between now and May 9th should come back with their ideas of recommendations. I mean, there were several recommendations given, but to see how they process that and what steps. So it seems to me that would be a logical next step, to hear from the economic development partner and say, what does PADIC think? How do they see this? What does the RDA think? What does Main Street, whatever.
And that would be a workshop, right?
Well, that would be a time when they would, yeah.
Well,
And I think it has to be outside of,
Outside of a council meeting?
Right.
yeah, a meeting extra of the council meeting, because it would be a place where people would ask questions.
We were picturing a round table scenario with tables that people could sit around and everybody facing each other, having a discussion.
so May 9th, council people, do you know, without maybe having a chance to look at your calendar, if May 9th, it's a Thursday evening, and I would suggest probably 6 o'clock again. That seems to be a pretty good time for people, and Mr. Vanderwall was able to get here. Or not Mr. Vanderwall, Mr. Harrington from Vanderwall. So 6 o'clock on May 9th. Anybody that, I'm getting nods of the head here, that
Sounds good.
sounds good, okay. Dick, Barb? Okay, Mike says yes. All right, I would say then, unless there's an overwhelming desire to continue our meeting this evening, I would say we just have a further discussion on the TIF district and TID
Okay.
on May 9th.
That was the only intent of the work session this evening, was to wrap up what we heard.
All right, so May 9th, 6 PM, work session. It may be here, not sure, but we'll tell you the location. Motion to adjourn.
No, so moved.
For a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
What I'd like you to do is put together a memo or a timeline like this, so that we can step back from the date and figure out what all needs to be accomplished by when. I scribbled this down.